Israelite. I'm so grateful for your time. I'm so grateful for your willingness to share your deep knowledge and your personal stories with us. And I kind of just want to dive in rather than going into any any other preliminaries. There's a lot to talk about. This is a topic that many people are extremely ignorant on, which is why I'm really, really excited to have you all help alleviate um, our ignorance.
Well, thank you for
Um,
inviting us. We really appreciate it.
Very happy to
yeah,
be.
Mm.
yeah, thank you.
Mm.
Um, So for a whole lot of people, the times they've encountered the language of Hebrew Israelite is someone proselytizing or preaching on the street, or news stories about anti-Semitism. Um, if that's the whole picture someone's carrying, what are they missing?
Well, first of all, we want to thank you, Rabbi Khan, for inviting us to your podcast. It's really an honor, and to my knowledge, it's the first time the American Council for Judaism has hosted Hebrew Israelites.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
hey, that's yeah, that's progress. That's progress.
Yeah,
So I also want to thank your listeners for their hospitality and patience and the opportunity to share. I want to encourage anyone listening uh, to be, I guess, open-minded about who Hebrew Israelites are, because there's a ton of misinformation out there. And don't get me wrong, people are entitled to their opinion, and not all of that misinformation is due to people outside of our community. Some of it's due to people inside of our community. But it's my hope that the facts would matter more than personal or even public agendas. Most of the information about Hebrew Israelites comes from people who don't self-identify as Israelites. Uh,
yeah,
we're basically a living proof text that people have been undereducated about Jews in general, especially about the diversity of Jews in the modern period. So thanks to everyone who's joining us. Um, Now to answer your question, if someone thinks a Hebrew Israelite is simply a street preacher or a hate group, I would say they're probably missing 99% of the story. And take me literally
Literally.
when I say that.
yeah,
I've been studying philosophical and cultural movements in my community for 3 decades. And 15 years ago, I completed a study on Black Jews that concluded, my conclusion was that there were several times the number of Jews in America that demographers at that time had maintained. And since then, my results have been confirmed by no less than four different studies of Hebrew
wow,
Israelites. There was an ethnographic study of Israelites conducted by Andrea Key. There was a study sponsored by Lifeway Research. There was a study on Israelites and anti-Semitism conducted by the Manhattan Institute. And then there was also the Jewish Affinity Study conducted by the Israeli government. I think it was their Ministry of Diaspora Affairs.
mhm,
And I would say that of these, the best was the Manhattan Institute study. And all of them supported the conclusion that approximately between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 African Americans are Jews by virtue of having Israelite ancestry. And I want to be clear, the studies show that these are not Jews by doctrine, and definitely not by any kind of supersessionist theology that gets kind of
yeah,
weird. But but the research shows that uh, Israelites are Jews by direct ancestry.
Right.
And the reason we know that is because we said it, right?
right.
So like
Legal.
it showed that, right? It showed up in the research. So our community has been targeted and criticized, um, really because our existence challenges some fundamental categories of cultural belonging. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So, let's take a few steps back.
Well,
Can you just give us your definition of what you mean, who and what you're actually describing when you use the language Hebrew Israelite?
oh, um, I would say that my own definition is probably different than what's usually put out there. What I've noticed in my work is that Hebrew Israelites are a pretty vast network, right? We're not a race, we're a network of people. And I would say we're three different things. The first thing is that we're people who descend from the biblical Hebrews and or Israelites. And second, we're people who interpret history, not just the Bible, not just scripture, and this is important, but we interpret our lived experience of history itself through Afro-Indigeneity, right? And we can go a little bit into, if you want, what that means. But we do have like Afro-Indigenous standpoints. And I would say the third thing is that our spirituality is rooted in combating um, systems of global domination, right? Including like racism and genocide and human trafficking. So we're not really one race or religion or ethnicity. Now, to be clear, various groups in the Israelite community embrace those labels, but
Mhm.
those labels are each only small aspects of our collective community. At least that's what I would say.
And I just wanted to piggyback off of what you said. I'd like to add that our people define the world in ways that make sense to us. You know, we're all individuals that make up a group of people together. I don't claim to be anything other than who I am. And I just happen to descend from Jews who are more than one thing, because it's human to be more than one thing, and it's should be normative. We are all a melting pot of many different things. I'm a mother, a sister, a wife. You can be more than one thing and function on this planet, right? So, to give an example of how it's problematic not to see that diversity, let's use my name, for instance. Um, some people where we live in the South pronounce my name Farah.
Fair.
Mhm.
That's what everybody says, by
Farah.
the way.
Yeah,
Um, when my father named me, he named me Farah, right? Some people can't roll that R, so they
I
say
can't.
Farah, right?
Yeah,
Some say
that's as good as
Farah.
I can do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look, I'll take what I can get. In the classroom when I'm teaching, it's so it's
Yeah.
different. But the first name is, it has significance. That name was given to me by my father. It holds weight and it's important to me. But people always mispronounce my name. And I think we've all had that experience of introducing ourselves to someone and they forget our name or they forget how to pronounce it or they call us by a different name, right? And that's an honest mistake, and it's okay. When you're learning, you learn how to say it the right way. You learn what it means if you ask those questions. You try to connect with the person. But on the other hand, what if one day you realize that you give your name, you showed them how to pronounce your name, you gave them the importance of them saying your name the right way so that they can identify you as who you say you are, and they know how to pronounce your name properly, but they refuse to do it. They
Mhm.
simply refuse to do it. We don't want to call you Farah. You are Farah. That's who we want you to be. That's how you are labeled and defined. And I know you told me that that's not who you are, but that's too bad. We want you to be who we say you are. My definition of you is more important than your definition of you. And that's pretty disrespectful, right? It's
Yeah.
almost like, don't feel threatened by the fact that something is different and it exists outside of the bounds of your ability to define it, right? Because we're all learning. I make mistakes every second, and it's normal to make mistakes. But what I do after I learn differently, I think that makes the world of a difference. And so let's take that example a step further. What if after they refuse to call me by my name, they start to spread lies to other people to convince them that what I said was not true. Not only is she not Farah, she's Farah. Her father didn't name her. And that name has no true significance to her. I Googled her and that's not what it says. I researched,
Chat GPT.
I jumped on Ancestry, and that's not what Ancestry's records are 100%. So that's not, or wherever, there is no such thing as human error, and this is what it is. And Wikipedia has defined her as she's a Forah, actually, and not a Farah. And we have words in the English language for people doing that kind of act, that kind of behavior, the behavior of not only discrediting someone, but redefining them and taking away their right to define themselves and causing others to believe differently than who they say they are. That's called slavery.
Yeah.
And not every aspect of slavery has been abolished or addressed in our society. Because when you try to take someone's identity away from them and you're forcing them to embrace another person's label or idea of who they say you are, that's something that happens when you kidnap and traffic people.
Yeah.
And you're taking away their original and proper name. It's not something that people with integrity do. And in our family, we believe integrity is important.
Yeah.
So we are Israelites. We are telling you that we are Israelites, and it's coming directly from our mouths, and it is from the horse.
It's interesting. You have to we have to say that, right?
Yes. And this is who we are saying we are, and as we continue on, and I'm sorry, I'm too long-winded sometimes, but
no, this is
I'm more long-winded than she is.
He's so patient with me, but we will explain more how that falls into different things like ancestry and things of that nature. But we say we're Israelites. We are Israelites.
Yeah, thank you. That metaphor, that comparison is really powerful, and really moving to hear. And I think that many people, various demographics, have that experience, right? I mean, of people just refusing to acknowledge who you say you are, what you say you are. And so I really appreciate you bringing that comparison out to help people connect. That's really, really powerful. Thank you. So you said that it's a very diverse group of people. You said there's been a few studies. Let's get specific. How many Hebrew Israelites are there according to these studies? And are there certain ways that you can help? Like I understand it's a very diverse group of people, right?
Yeah.
Are there certain ways that you can help break it out for people to understand those differences? And are there larger chunks that can be kind of explained?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess the best way to say it is, telling someone that you're an Israelite, it doesn't really go much beyond that, right? I mean, it's just like telling someone that, you're Jewish. As a matter of fact, most of the time, if people ask a question about Hebrew Israelites, if you ask, well, how would somebody who's Jewish answer that question? Well, tell us about Jewish people. Usually it's the exact same answer, right?
Sure.
According to the Manhattan Institute, like I said, it was the most detailed study I mentioned before. I would say we're at least 20 million, probably over 22 or 23 million persons in North America. That's a conservative number, by the way. about 13 million of those 22 million self-identify as Black or African American. And I was told, I presented at an Ivy League university recently, and someone comes up after me, after I gave the presentation. He says, well, Dr. Isaac, I think your numbers are a little inflated. I said, they're not my numbers, right? Like studies, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The methodologies are available for free online, right? You can go and verify. Now, they're smart. What they'll give is the percentage of people that show up in the social research as Jews, but they don't actually give the population data,
Right.
right? So if the
Got it.
percentages say, 1 out of 4 African Americans, or
Mm.
23 point whatever percent of African Americans identify as Jews,
Mhm.
well, there's 50 million African Americans,
Right.
right? So you can
You can do the
you
math.
can do the
You
math,
can do the
right?
math, yeah.
Yeah.
So about 13 million of those 22 million self-identify as Black or African American. The
Right.
rest do not self-identify as Black or African American, but they did in the study self-identify as Hebrew Israelite, right?
Mhm.
According to the definition they were given, that Black folks, African Americans, um, are themselves disproportionately uh, Jews.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's interesting. I just noticed in my own neighborhood right around the corner. I live in Borough Park in New York. So there's a lot of like ultra Orthodox Haredi communities, but
Mhm.
there's an Israelite community, and the sign is all in Spanish, and
Mhm.
they're of Latin origin, but it says Israelita, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Um,
right.
and it makes me wonder, like I walked by there a bunch of times, I never noticed it, but now, about to
Right.
have this conversation, I noticed it. And it makes me wonder how often I and other people walk by Israelite communities and just don't even really notice what we're seeing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a
Exactly.
part of it.
Mm.
And my ordination is it's actually really good. My ordination was primarily geared towards doing Jewish chaplaincy work
Mhm.
for like highly assimilated and interfaith members of the Jewish community,
Right.
right? That's basically where I find my entree into serving the Israelite community. And I think it's fair to say we're highly assimilated, right? So when you go
Very
into the
much so.
Hispanic community,
Yeah.
if you're not familiar with your local Hispanic or even your Latinx community, it's going to be hard for you to read the signs,
Right.
right? There's literally like symbols and a history of rituals and slogans and signs
Yeah.
that will help someone understand the distinction between a Hebrew family or like a Hebrew Pentecostal family, um,
Mhm.
or a family that practices Christianity, but in the family they understand themselves as Israelites, right? Uh, that's a whole subculture, right?
Yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
entire subculture. And what my friends in the rabbinic communities have told me is something similar to what you said. Said, we didn't realize we were surrounded by all these Jews, right?
Right.
Right.
They're
And
everywhere.
yeah. We're really all over the place. And I want to add, when people talk about the folks that are on the street corners with their signs and just grabbing passersby and having street sidewalk arguments over scripture. um they're just they're small. They're vocal, but they're small communities in the broader Israelite universe. As a matter of fact, if you take all of those groups, and I mean all of them, that public policy organizations like the ADL or the Southern Poverty Law Center, if you take all of those groups and you put them together, right, you're literally talking about zero point
One.
zero zero one
1%.
percent of uh, the Hebrew Israelite community, right?
That's such a small amount. I'm from New Jersey originally.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that if you think about it, go to Penn Station and pick one person, or not even one, like a small child running through the train station. And that's just not many people at all during
Right.
rush hour, you know?
Yeah.
It's so small in comparison. And that's not how all of us are
Yeah.
identifying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the parallel to the wider Jewish community as well is direct, right? Like when most people think of Jews, they think of an ultra-Orthodox Jew wearing certain garb and certain beard and certain payas, and like that's it. And that is it's very similar, and it's also
And
similar in New York,
right.
and
And
Yeah.
they're out
that's a
here
part of the
asking
Jewish,
everybody if
that's a
they're
That's a
part of
part
Jewish
of,
history,
right.
right? That like
yeah,
that's a part of our heritage, that's a part of our community, right?
Mhm.
They have a certain publicity and distinctiveness,
Mhm.
mhm,
but you're missing a big
A
yeah,
huge chunk.
family if you think that those are the only
yeah.
people that are Jewish, you know.
Yeah.
So can you share with us the origins of the movement as you see it, where the kind of in your research, where the earliest kind of records are, and where what came before those records as well, right? Obviously, a recorded history is much later than when history actually begins.
Right.
Right. Right.
Um, hmm. When does I would say, well, to be frank, first of all, our original ancestors are uh, the Hebrews and the Israelites of the scriptures.
Mhm.
First of all, right? That's the first thing, and it's important to say that because um, it keeps us uh, in common narratives with other communities of Jews that may live in places like Asia and especially Africa and Latin America. Um, but in terms of how we came to exist as we presently do in the Western Hemisphere, I would say that the earliest Israelites probably came directly from Africa,
Mhm.
long before the the 1700s, right? And it's kind of weird because for 100 years, these people have been saying that our community began in the 1890s. And
Right.
look, I have no earthly idea where that notion came from. This is just like, you know, the way they talk about it is just like it was Prophet Cherry and Prophet Crowdy, and then all of a sudden, right,
We existed.
we existed, right? And it's it's just not true,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so at this point, I'm convinced that, you know, that narrative is just something people made up because they couldn't accept the fact that our communities, not just individuals, right?
Mhm.
But our communities have been in the Americas far
Right.
longer than most immigrant
Right.
Jewish communities from Europe, right?
Mhm.
So when people
Sure.
say there were very few Israelites or even Jews of color actually in the United States prior to the years of European Jewish
Right.
immigration, I always question it. I always question that because uh, free and I should say independent Israelite communities, they are documented,
So,
right?
Mhm.
yeah. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, 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 no. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
So I'm excited because this is one of these moments where I get to be proud of my existence, right? Because if we can all see me now on camera, and I'm technically flesh and blood, I'm not a cyborg, and I am here, you know, and I was born on this planet. Um, I wanted to kind of give an example of what Walter is communicating, what he's talking about. So I have right here in my hand, and I'll turn it around in just a moment, a document that lists names of Israelites in my family.
And we're going
Okay.
to show a couple of these documents
Be-
actually, but
yeah,
go ahead.
because we've learned well. Walter has taught me the importance of research, and as a teacher, I have students tell me all the time, "Show me or it didn't happen, or prove it." Right? You can if you just say something that's not necessarily going to solidify what your claim is. But if you can show it, if you can prove it, then that's helpful, right? That's helpful to learn. So I'm just going to kind of, I don't know if you can see the highlighted area right down there.
Mm-hmm.
Those highlighted individuals are members of my family. And these members of my family were born as far back as the 1750s. Um, I've been able to trace my ancestry back pretty far.
Yeah.
Very,
Yeah.
very, very, very far. So these are actually not too far, but they were born as far back as the 1750s, some of them, and that's almost 300 years ago.
Yeah, but those are Israelites,
Those are
right? Like the documents
Israelites.
confirm that they're actually Israelites.
And they
And it's
named them
right. They have their names, they
Israelites.
show where they live. And in her case, that document is from 1816, I think. It's from 1815,
Wow.
1816. And that's like,
And
but
should I read this section?
sure,
And
if you want.
it
Please.
says,
Yeah.
and the very top of this document says a list of free Negroes on Israel Hill. So if anyone is familiar with that place in Virginia,
Yeah.
that is the origins of some of my family.
Yeah, that was an Israelite settlement
Right.
that actually one of Thomas Jefferson's family members helped found. They actually like
Gave
gave
land.
gave
Yeah.
land for a community of Israelites, and they founded one of these early free settlements. But you know, some of the people in Farah's family were the first settlers in that community,
Right.
right?
Wow.
But when you're talking about the 1750s when they were born, that's
That's
almost 300
that's
years
pretty
ago,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And this is only one of several records that are hundreds of years old, which explicitly refer um, to my family as Israelites, which, as some of your viewers know, that was a term used 200 years ago to refer to Jews.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
the early, like not even that early, 1800s European Jews that came over often referred to themselves as Israelite. And even
right.
in Europe, in France, the Alliance Israelite
Yeah.
is
Yep.
is the Jewish organization, but they were calling themselves Israelites back then. Yeah.
Israelites, right. And so
Yeah.
people in my family came from Hebrew communities in Africa that practiced the kind of biblical Judaism. My ancestors were documented as arriving in the Chesapeake region of Virginia. And within one generation, they set up their own Israelite community and they began to practice some of their traditions in North America. So all of this is documented. All of this has been researched by some really wonderful scholars that um, found that information, and individuals that um, may not have thought that they would find that type of information, right?
Sure.
Um, and so I've been able to learn from Walter, actually specifically from groups that focus on this type of work, that there are so many families, that there are others that
Yeah.
exist like me,
Yeah.
right? And there were other documented groups of Israelites that existed long before the 20th century. So for me, I think that's something that's important
Yeah.
for people to know. We're not something that has been made up or cult or fad. We didn't say, Judaism sounds really cool. I think I want to,
Right.
and that, we
Yeah.
didn't just pop up and start calling ourselves
Yeah.
Israelites, some of us.
Nobody tells their kids when the kids ask, well, where do you come
Well,
from?
today you're an Israelite.
Today, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, human beings have culture,
And they
right?
make choices. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So instead, people should know that we are people with a history and a culture and a message that goes back to the earliest years of colonization of the Americas.
Now, at this point, it should be clear. It should be clear, Rabbi, that we're kind of using our own story
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
Yeah.
as examples for entrees. Now, unlike Farah, my family is based on the oral tradition, right? So I brought two photos with me today. One photo is of that's my great grandfather, right? That's my great grandfather. And the thing is,
Do you
he
have his
was
name?
his name was William Taylor, right? He was Seminole,
Should I
right?
hold that up again?
No. Well, you can hold it up
Yeah.
if you want.
Yeah.
I can get closer to the
Right,
camera.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
That's great grandpa. But the thing is, he was Seminole, right? He was Seminole, and I'm not Seminole. In our family, we say we're of Seminole and Muscogee descent, right? But I'm not a member of the Seminole Nation as it were. But he was, and he had a daughter. That's my grandmother, and at some point she converted. We don't know how, right? But by the time my father was born, she was a Jew, right? So in the case of my family, we have indigenous people, right? We have Native Americans, but Native Americans that are moving into the Jewish community, right? And not in a way where they forget their Native American heritage, right?
Right.
But also perform Judaism. They perform and observe the Torah through the lens of being Native American, right?
Yeah.
The reason this is significant is because what you find is a lot of African Americans doing something similar. Now, I've been public in the past. I've gotten into trouble actually because people say he's calling himself Afro-Palestinian. Well, in my family, I guess you could say we're non-Arab people of Afro-Palestinian descent. And sometimes people want to know what I mean by that. Well, this photo, what I meant was that was our tradition, right? So you know how you do those you know how you're in elementary school and they say, okay, go ask people in your family, fill out the family tree, right?
Yeah.
What is that? What is that called? Is that a family tree?
It's like it's like an ancestry project.
Right. So what I did is I went and spoke to all the older folks in my family I could find. Grandparents, great uncles, they all said the same thing. The majority of the people in my family, not all, but the majority of them were trafficked from the Middle East during the time of the Ottomans. And when I was 11 years old, and again, when I was in middle school, they said, well, we want you to say what your relatives tell you about where they came from, because America is supposed to be this melting pot. And so I kept this. I drew this when I was a kid, right? So as everybody can see, right, like it's not that people in my family uh, didn't say we came from West or Central Africa, but the dominant narrative by far was that we came from places like Egypt and Palestine, right? And that's where our Judaism comes from, right? This is undisputed in my family. It was the dominant narrative. But in my case, the problem was because it's oral tradition, it was not acceptable by people in rabbinic communities, right? So as a child, I actually converted to Judaism because that oral narrative didn't fulfill the requirements for communal membership. And I guess we're sharing this story because people need to understand why the Israelite community exists. It exists for people like us. Right? If rabbinic communities rejected us because they said, oh, you're not Jews, or at least we can't verify you're Jews, right? Hebrew Israelites don't require me to convert. Or we're already Jews, right? Like that's our tradition. They accept us as we are, right? So I was raised as a Hebrew Israelite, and you know, as far as conversion is concerned, I wouldn't encourage anybody to convert to anything, even though I did it. It was funny, the rabbi who oversaw my conversion, he came to me years later after he spoke to people in my family and he apologized. He said, I
Wow.
didn't know, right? Like he
Yeah.
said, I think I actually made a mistake
Yeah.
because he learned more about where I was coming from, you know?
That's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I mean, what is striking to me about both of your stories and so much of the way that you're describing this is like is that it is exactly just how Judaism works everywhere. Right? It's not an exception. It's not different, right? This is just how like the way you described both your great grandfather and then your grandmother and then other people who have channeled Judaism through the other heritages they bring along with it is literally just how Judaism has developed everywhere in the world, right?
Right.
And um, it obviously like is glaring to me that the reason that this is the case in America is because of American racism, right? Like it
Yeah.
is how like everything functions in this country,
Yeah.
which also has been a cornerstone of your research, this idea of modern racial Judaism,
Mhm.
Mm.
um, and that racial Judaism is also has a deep history of um, affecting sexual exploitation of trafficked African women,
Mhm.
which is a really touchy subject, of course. It's a really difficult subject, but it's a really important subject. And if you all would be willing to talk a little bit about how that happened and how that relates to the Israelite community, I'd appreciate it.
Oh wow.
You want,
Well,
you
well,
want to explain modern racial
well,
justice
yeah,
first?
that's right. But well, modern racial Judaism in my work, when I use that phrase, all I mean is that, you know, when religions of Judaism kind of weaponize race in order to promote racial divisions and racism, right? And I want to be clear, modern racism was not a specifically Jewish invention, right? We're not
Right.
not peddling anti-Semitic theories here. Um, but that doesn't mean that there's no such thing as Jewish racism, right?
Right.
There is. And it's something that I would say the Jewish community continues to struggle with. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah,
I agree
100%.
as well. But Israelite history in America is complicated. Because we have so many people with mixed backgrounds in our community. So many people, but a lot of people in our generation fetishize mixture, you know. And if someone is racially mixed because their parents fell in love and gave birth to them, you know, then that person will have a different set of questions about their identity that's rooted in love, right? It won't be the same um, as the cases of people who have a mixed identity that comes into existence through violence, you know.
Mhm.
Um, Mixed people are the result, some of us are the result of slavery and sex trafficking, and they have a different relationship to their backgrounds than free people would. Ask different questions, and you know they have to explain why suffering exists in terms of their own bodies, not just to themselves and to others, but imagine being a mother or a father and explaining this to your children. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah,
that that's where it gets tricky.
exactly. And that's a big part of being an Israelite, right? A big part of being an Israelite is explaining to our families, you know, why did slavery happen? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
for 400 years, according to, I mean, that's traditionally how we say it. Of course, you know, when it begins and ends, debatable, but why? You know what I mean? Like, how did we come into existence and why do we exist? And our customs help us understand why, you know?
Especially during a time when we're being told not to discuss such things, or we're needing to be careful about how we approach
Right.
certain topics in our society, someone telling you to be careful how you describe yourself or be careful about the truth you tell, um, that's that can be difficult for, my 11-year-old son or my 17-year-old daughter to understand that they may not be acknowledged because their story or their family's story, their ancestors' story, might offend someone else or might cause discomfort in some way.
Mm.
But they exist and they're here, and it should be okay for them to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So one of the ways that history gets kind of dismissed, which you alluded to, Dr. Isaac, is that the relationship between European Jews and slavery, because it has been overblown in some instances, is always overblown, right? Which is, or is always a taboo thing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main reasons I really wanted to have this conversation with you too is to help dispel some of those myths and those taboos if possible. Um, is there anything you'd really want the audience to know about that kind of taboo in particular that might be helpful in breaking down those barriers and making perhaps the next generation not feel like they had to hide themselves?
Hmm. Um, I think I think in terms of this generation, what I tell people is, these kids grew up seeing their parents watch reruns of like Criminal Minds and Law and Order SVU and those things. Because when I was a kid, um, people didn't really talk publicly about slavery, right? They didn't talk publicly about like human trafficking or sex trafficking and what that means and what that does to people, right? It was kind of a
Well, yeah,
taboo
very
topic.
taboo.
But these kids, they grew up with seeing crime shows, right? And so I
Yeah.
think it's easier today to communicate those ideas to young people. And yeah, like you said, it's a difficult topic, but I think it's important for uh, for people to have that conversation, particularly with respect to how a lot of Israelite women are left out of the conversation publicly, right? Like the material you hear about Hebrew Israelites, it doesn't talk about like our families, right? It
Right.
doesn't talk
Right.
about the fact, like my mother was the one who first told me about us being Hebrew Israelites, right? And I was like, what, 5 years old, something. I was really, really young. Um, but the notion that women are playing a proactive role in sustaining our communities, um, despite some hardships. I think that should also be part of the public conversation. And I think young people are ready to hear that, right? People couldn't hear that
Mhm.
generations ago when men controlled all the mainstream Jewish institutions, right? But I think young people, yeah, having seen many more women in positions of leadership and paid attention to the concerns of a lot of
Right.
women and gender minorities, I think they can receive that now.
Right, because a lot of our women are missing from the picture. It's almost like they've kind of been written out of that narrative. And a lot of things end and begin with women in that
Mhm.
narrative, in that respect, especially when you're talking about sex trafficking and human trafficking, right? Um, a lot of the women in our community are like me. And I want to preface this by saying that what I have to say may be disturbing to some people. So I want to give a trigger warning to everyone online and anyone who may have a child that, because I am a mom, and so I totally respect that we all raise our kids in different ways. If they do not want their children to hear maybe graphic communication
Yeah.
or with sexual content, then now would be a great time to escort them away from the computer screen. But this needs to be said and clarified, and I promise not to be too long-winded with it. When we talk about the word slavery, we need to be clear about what that really means, right? It doesn't mean servitude. It's a little bit beyond indentured servitude or any type of service or act of service, right? That needs to be clarified. When they say that an enslaved Black woman was a domestic or a housekeeper, we should be clear about what that means, right? During that time period, we should be clear about what actually happened. So I'm going to use my own story as an example. And of course, I was born in 77, so I wasn't born back during the time of slavery, but I am a survivor of many things that constitute taking someone's rights away from them. The first time that I was raped, I was 4 years old. There were several rapes that took place in my life, and I am a survivor of those instances. I am also a survivor of human trafficking. Um, I am a survivor of domestic partner violence. I am a survivor of molestation, right? So a lot of these topics are very taboo, and a lot of these topics are things that, for some odd reason, it takes our society a great deal of effort to acknowledge or to hear when they're actually taking place. If they did not take place, I could see the idea of being disagreeable toward it, but it's become a really big problem, especially when you can say that the first time you were raped, you were 4 years old. Not the first time that I was molested, the first rape, the first rape. And so that's a big deal. And I'm not the only one by far, not in a long shot. And that is heart crushing to me as a mom and as an educator and as somebody that just likes humans and wants, regardless of how other people think, people in our community or society to be well and to be safe, regardless of what you believe or who you are, right?
Now, I think the reason we're raising this topic is because what people don't understand is how it's seen today is not how it was seen during the time of slavery.
Right.
Like for our ancestors, those kinds of assaults, right? That's something that happened every single day, right? Every single for centuries.
Centuries.
Right.
That's how much is a century?
Right.
Yeah.
And we still survived, right? And even after all that violence, we chose to embrace our Israelite heritage, to preserve our our identities and our traditions as Jews, right? And for those of us who returned, to keep our connection to the Creator intact. You know what I'm saying?
And to survive, for those of us who did survive some of the horrors that we experienced, because it's not just something that affects you physically. It's not just the body that is responding. It's the mind, it's the body, it's the emotion. It's so many things, and it impacts so many different areas of your life, including how you relate to others, including how you relate to the people that you love, and whether or not you can touch them or they can touch you, or whether a simple exchange like a hug will bring back trauma or will stave it off, right? So now in my own case, as a survivor, I don't allow those experiences anymore to define me. I have moments, where I'm triggered and I have to work through it mentally. but I haven't allowed those experiences to define myself or my children. I've actually done a lot of work to make sure that my kids were even safer than I was when I was their age, right? And I've counseled and worked with many survivors over the years. I've been teaching for over 25 years, and I've had the blessing of being able to work with individuals who've experienced similar hardships that I have right in my life.
Right. And if you look at what we do in the Israelite community and the work that we do, a lot of it is connected to addressing the historical consequences of of centuries of human trafficking. And a
Right.
big part of that is just us passing our heritage to our children, because the scriptures teach that the Torah is a narrative that teaches formerly enslaved people how to live as a free people.
Right.
You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Which is
And that's
difficult.
meaningful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like it's stunning to me that people would have an issue with the fact that we're returning to our creator if you come from a family that has decided to um publicly tell other folks that we're Jews, right?
Because
Embrace
if you're a
that. Yeah.
survivor, you're not choosing to have uh those things happen to you, right?
Correct.
You're
Yeah.
not choosing to be moved away from your community or trafficked away from your family or told that you are now new name, new purpose, new ideals, or nothing at all, right? Less
Yeah.
than human. So that's not a choice. So when it's time for you to say, I just want to go home, you would expect
Hmm.
a home to be open and available to you.
That's right.
And you would hope that home would still be there. It's very difficult when it's not.
And Israel is
Yeah.
our home. Israel, not the nation state of Israel. I'm talking about the people
The people.
of
Yeah.
Israel, right? That
Mhm.
that is our home. You know what I mean? And I think that
Yeah.
that kind of summarizes a lot about
Yeah.
what it means to be a Hebrew Israelite, you know.
Yeah, so, I think that survivors are powerful. And I mention that because there are so many men and women that do not talk about what they have gone through. And that includes the stories of our ancestors and
Right.
what they experienced in order to um, remain in this nation and still remain a productive citizen of
Right.
this nation despite this against all odds, right?
Mm,
And I think that's important to remember.
yeah.
It's really important. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing that aspect of what it means to be Israelite and what it means to use this tradition as a healing tradition.
That's what it
And as
is.
a
It is
yeah,
healing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
exact. That's the
That's
perfect
it's the
wording.
Most High reminding us um that uh that the Creator has not abandoned us,
Right.
yeah,
even after
All
all
what
this
we've been
time,
through.
right?
Yeah.
You know, it's awesome.
Good.
So I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you know, you just kind of got
no,
us
it's
talking,
no,
you know
it's
what I'm
it's an
saying?
emotional, it's emotional and it's powerful, and I'm really grateful that you're willing to share that deep of experience and thought and vulnerability here. Um, I did just open up the chat. If anyone wants to ask questions, we're gonna take a few once it gets going. So anyone here on Zoom, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. No one's done it yet because I just announced it. But as we wait for them to come in, if they do, they may not. Sometimes people are just happy to listen. Um, Something that's connected to what you just shared is another version of what descent means in the Israelite tradition, and this idea of ancestral transmigration, and how that can you talk about that a little bit and how that uh, informs Israelite identity and how it is related to the same history you were just discussing?
Right. You know, recently I was invited um to speak at UPenn, because, my colleagues in the field of Jewish studies wanted to know, like, how did all these African Americans pop up in their research as being Jews, even though you would think that's something that would have showed up in the research prior, right? So they wanted to find out, like how was that possible?
Right.
And so what I told them was that the criteria that sociologists were using in previous generations were Eurocentric criteria.
Right.
They weren't asking the question of how people from Africa would identify a Jew, right? Because they were assuming that African people would do the same thing that Europeans do in order to see and recognize someone who's a Jew. So ancestral transmigration is just a fancy term for reincarnation, right?
Mhm.
And the basic idea is this: a lot of West African cultures think that you know who your ancestors are because of the characteristic you share with them. So let's say I was born, let's say I was born with a certain birthmark, and everybody in the local village knew that my great grandfather had the exact same birthmark that I was born with, right?
Right.
So what they would say is that clearly I am the spirit of my great grandfather reborn. What I told the folks at Katz was you kind of have to think about slavery the way West African people would think about that birthmark.
Mm.
So if I was born into slavery, or if I was kidnapped and trafficked into slavery, and the only people I knew that were born into slavery for centuries were the Hebrews of the Bible,
Mhm.
then other Africans or African Americans would say, well, clearly you all are the original Israelites reborn into the present day. And so there's several records of African Americans during the Civil War and prior to the Civil War claiming to be reincarnated Israelites of the Bible. And that's just a part of our tradition. And so what I told them was that was not a criterion that social researchers were looking at in order to identify populations of Jews, right?
Right.
So in other words, we need better population research in the field of
Right.
Jewish studies, right? That was, that was the claim that I was making. And when you make that claim, what you see is that the largest contingent of Jews in North America, probably African American,
Right.
period, you know.
Mm.
But I
Right.
do
Thank you.
remember, yeah, I do remember you in the advertisement for our conversation today. You talked about like truth and reconciliation, or something
Yeah.
like that. And I
And we
wanted
just
to
got
go
a
to
we just
that
got a
because,
question about that too.
yeah, what did they want?
Sam said, what are some perspectives on relations and reconciliation between rabbinic Jews and Israelites moving forward? Which I think is a great question. We're
Yeah,
at 7:30, but I'm happy to extend a little bit, especially for this particular topic, if you're willing to give a little bit more time.
yeah, sure. I think it's a great question. I you know, oh wow. And it's also a loaded question.
Yeah.
Right.
I am not convinced, and I'm saying this just based on my research, both formal and anecdotal. I'm not convinced most African Americans who are Israelites are really interested in practicing rabbinic Judaism. First of all, I think there are certain aspects of slavery that have created barriers that make reconciliation a very, very difficult um, goal to achieve
Right.
in our generation. People ask me, well, where is a local Hebrew Israelite congregation I go visit? I would say you can visit a Hebrew Israelite congregation, but my recommendation is that you befriend someone in the community first.
Right.
Our
Respectfully.
Right, our congregations
Open.
were set up to educate and promote the thriving of people who came out of centuries of enslavement, right?
Right.
So certain types of behaviors and questions and ideas, they may be harmful to people in our community. Um, so what about, I don't know, what reconciliation? So if I would say that if people in the rabbinic world wanted to do that, I would give it 3 or 4 steps. right? 3 or 4 steps would go a long way. First thing, um, rabbis and rabbinical students need education, right? We need to promote education about Hebrew Israelites in rabbinical seminaries, Jewish institutions, and for practicing rabbis, right?
Right.
That's the first thing. People need to be given in the rabbinic
Education.
community good information
Right.
about Jews in racial minority communities in the States. Second thing, and by the way, like a friend of ours, one of our rabbis, Tamar Manasseh, brought this up. She talked about in a recent conversation with Susanna
It
Heschel.
was really good.
Yeah, about the need for an urban ministry component in our rabbinical seminaries. And I think that's smart. Second thing is those rabbis need to educate people in their congregations and local Jewish nonprofits and Jewish federations, right? So rabbis should take that component, now that they're educated or more educated about the history, they should take that to the Jewish community. And then I think liberal Jewish movements, right? Secular, humanistic, Reconstructionist, Reform, Jewish Renewal, maybe even some conservative synagogues, they need to have a strong conversation. They need to debate waiving conversion requirements for anybody who is a descendant or of someone who was enslaved or a victim of human trafficking. That's a non-starter, right? Because I feel like our community has already done enough to demonstrate our commitment to our people, right? So if a Hebrew Israelite shows up, and again, I don't think most people in our community are interested in practicing rabbinism, but some are. Some are interested in learning, right? So if a member of a Hebrew Israelite community shows up one day at a synagogue, take conversion off the table. Take conversion off the table. I think after people become educated in rabbinic communities, they need to have some very serious conversations about recognizing that many African Americans are in fact Jews. Now, my understanding is the Talmud teaches that if a Jewish person owns a non-Jewish slave, then after that person is liberated, they're to be considered an Israelite in every respect. The problem is that never really happened, right? Like after the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments to the Constitution were passed, predominantly white Jewish institutions should have came out and said, okay, all of the people who are affiliated with any act of trafficking by Jews are now Jews, right? But the truth is, back then, Judaism, rabbinic Judaism, was going through its own philosophical crisis, right? At that time, it was the Reform movement and the conservative movement. You know what I'm saying? So they were not in a position to address what took place during the centuries of enslavement.
And
that issue, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I do also want to name that at that time, those communities that were predominantly white and were Jews of European descent were also deeply concerned with maintaining whatever privilege they got for being white in the racial hierarchy here in America, which of course would have prevented that as well.
Right. And, I would say to people in the Zionist communities, right? I've never self-identified as a Zionist. I don't have anything against people who do. I've never self-identified as an anti-Zionist either, right? But I would say that if you're concerned about the claim that Zionism teaches Jews to be racist, right? This is something liberal Jews should look at. Now, the Orthodox community, the traditional halakhic community, that's something different. What they've done, and it's interesting, they've actually moved ahead than liberal movements in addressing this issue. They passed a responsum, right? It's not accepted by the chief rabbinate, at least that's my understanding, but they have passed a responsum saying that certain African communities are in fact historically Jewish communities. And those communities accept Hebrew Israelites as part of the Hebrew diaspora, right? So that's the halakhic community's response. Liberal Judaism has yet to deal with the fact that African Americans are Jews on a large scale, in terms of a large community. This is why Hebrew Israelites in Israel that have been there for 40 years still are not citizens. They
Right.
have people born in Israel. They have fought in wars for the nation of Israel. They have died in the military for Israel, and they still are ineligible to be citizens.
Right.
And if we want to address divisions and controversies like that, liberal movements taking conversion off the table and having an alternative process to accept returnees, I think that will go a long way. I really
Yeah.
do. They need to start paying attention to the research, right?
Yeah.
The research and not the rhetoric.
Yeah.
The research, not the
Thank you.
rhetoric. That's so important, especially with a lot of individuals being given, we can put anything on the internet now. We can write anything in
Right.
Wikipedia. I
Yeah.
can write in there. He said that his name was Andrew Kahn, but it's supposed to be Andrew.
Right.
When I said in the beginning, I said it's such a cool spelling of his name, right? And
Thank
he
you.
said my
Yeah.
mom did that, and I was like, she's pretty cool. But what if someone decided on Wikipedia, I don't like the way you spell it. I want you to
Yeah.
spell it differently. So there's all of this misinformation, and there's research that's accepted that's not really true, honest, academic, with integrity research.
Now, at the same time, I know we've gone on and on and on, but I just want to put in a plug for some of the contemporary research on African Americans who are Israelites. The work being done by people like Diana Burnett and Laura Liebman, talking about people in the Israelite community and how we construct identity and how we push our traditions and Torah observances forward. It's really good historical research, right? And if you're interested in that kind of reconciliation, I would say another thing that people can do is include information about Hebrew Israelites in Jewish history museums and make them standard aspects of Jewish Federation information about the local Jewish community.
From members, if possible, whenever possible, from members of the community, from members that have done research or have tried to shine the light on different topics and have a voice in that community that can actually study to show themselves approved.
They only cite white scholars, right? Like they don't. People don't realize, like, Hebrew Israelites, we've had our own scholars, we've had our own rabbis, we've had our own elders, we've had our own cantors. And some of those people in recent years, people say, oh, we've discovered all these Black Jewish, blah, blah, blah. They're all Hebrew Israelites. They don't say, for example, Rabbi Decol Scritta was a Hebrew Israelite. But I talked to his students. Like, I know that he's a part of our camp. He's a Hebrew Israelite, right? But nowadays they're calling him like a Jewish cantor that learned Ashkenazi cantillation. We just need to have more accurate representations of history. You know what I'm saying?
So we're a bit over time. I don't care. I'm happy.
You're awesome.
Let's
I
just do
did
a
want
couple
to.
questions. Yeah, let's just do a couple questions.
I just wanted to direct your attention to the chat. There are a few questions in here. If there's anything that draws your attention that you'd like to answer, I'd love give you the opportunity a minute to just look through them.
Interested in researching African Jewish communities and biblical studies. How would you suggest I get started?
Should I read that question out loud?
Maybe.
And for everyone, I see a lot of thank yous.
Yeah.
Thank you for the thank you. That's really a blessing. It's super kind. But Rabbi Andy, thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Oh,
It really is
absolutely.
super helpful. If it can do any good, then like all praises to the Most High, you know?
Right.
Mm.
Okay, so I see two questions that I want to respond to. One question, they said that I had mentioned that Hebrew Israelites don't have a formal conversion process. That's not true. That's not true. Like, religious institutions in the Israelite community do have conversion processes.
Right.
My point is they suspend those processes if someone comes from a community of people who have experienced genocide or slavery
Right.
or modern
Trafficking.
violence, right?
Right.
So, one of the criticisms we get is, how can you confuse those categories? Blacks, Jews, Native Americans are the true children of Israel. Uh, my my response is, how could we not do that? Right? Like I want us to think about what our Native American brothers and sisters actually experience.
Right.
Like, what did we actually just see happen in the last 500 years of human history? What
Right.
did African people actually experience, right?
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how, in any universe, our attitude should be anything other than that those brothers and sisters, our indigenous brothers and sisters, are sacred and they are chosen, and we should remember that, right?
Yeah.
Any other response to people who've survived genocide, I don't get it.
It's not a good,
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't, you know what I'm
just
saying?
in consideration of like the Trail of Tears, this is part
Mm.
of my ancestry. And so I remember when I was younger going to powwows with my grandma and meeting some of the members of my community. And it's so beautiful to see a celebration where really there's not always a reason to celebrate, right? But
Mhm.
but there's been growth regardless. Tree gets struck by lightning and the tree looks dead. But if you see green coming out of those burnt and singed edges, the tree's still living because the roots are strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so we
Mhm.
need to acknowledge the roots within those groups of individuals, within those members of society that have gone through a great deal of lightning, but they're still there and they should still be respected and acknowledged as, you know, part of the human condition, right, of thriving, right?
Yeah.
That should be
Yeah.
celebrated, not
Not shunned.
not shunned
Not
Not
or
shunned.
shunned.
excluded.
Yeah.
Not shunned. So,
Right.
so to answer the question, yeah, we do have in the religious Hebrew Israelites conversion processes, but those processes, sometimes they're just simple liturgical acts of welcoming people
Right.
back,
Yeah.
right? Which is not the same as a conversion. There are some traditions that involve people coming together, right?
Mm.
Just sharing a meal
Right.
and recognizing that people
Breaking
who were
bread.
trafficked, you know what I'm saying? They're like, and that's a big part of being an enslaved person, being able to go be reunited with the people from whom you were taken.
Like going home.
Exactly. And if anything interrupts that process, I don't care what it is. If anything interrupts the process of us or our ancestors being able to go back home, um, it doesn't help. It just furthers the negative consequences of slavery is really what it
Yeah.
does. Now, the other question, someone else asked the question. It was about academics. I'm Black, West African, and Jewish in the process of conversion. I'm a graduate student interested in researching African Jewish communities and biblical studies. How would you suggest I get started? Wow, it's a great question.
Hmm.
Um, I was a part of a group of people called the Center for Afro-Jewish Studies many, many years ago. And I would say there's basically two ways to go about that academically, especially if you're a graduate student. One way is to look at Israeli universities, see, if Israeli universities have Mizrahi studies programs, or Arab Jewish studies programs, and see how open they are. You have to really be careful to see how open scholars are to expanding their knowledge. The other option, and I think this is the better option, is to attend a large university or a large cohort, right? A university that has cohorts with other universities with very strong departments in both Africana studies and Judaic studies, right? And a big research budget, right? So think, very high end, very affluent universities with a large standing endowments, right? Those places tend to have more money for people who want to conduct on the ground research.
More room for your ideas.
Exactly.
Right? Because that's if they don't have the budget or they don't have the support, then they're not necessarily going to be open to it. It wouldn't be because they don't think that your research is important or your ideas aren't great, but they can't really support you in that capacity. So it would be important to have the support that you need.
Yeah, do your research on who's going to be on that committee, right? Do your research on who's going to be on that dissertation committee.
Yeah.
So one last question. Where can the folks that are watching find more information from you, organizations that you are involved with that you might direct them to? Any way that folks can keep up with your work and learn more?
Uh, well, there's a variety of institutions and organizations nowadays that promote Jewish diversity. I would encourage people to look them up. I have been recently involved in directing small nonprofit work. We've yet to really get off the ground. It's called the Olaudah Equiano Institute. And
Can you spell that?
Olaudah, Olaudah, Equiano, Equuiano.
Sorry, I didn't mean to test you. I just want people to be able to find
it's
it.
good.
As a teacher, I approve.
Yeah. And we do have a website, but again, we're still in the beginning stages. I do think the website allows people to donate to the Equiano Institute. The Institute is basically cultural education and research. We have a good group of people on our advisory board. Yeah, in the future, we hope to be able to use that as a platform to continue to do this kind of work, right? We need more institution building, right? We need more positive dialogue between people in different parts of the Hebrew and the Israelite diaspora.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you both so much. Thank you for sharing so deeply and generously with us. I'm so grateful. I hope this is just the beginning of a relationship with ACJ and also just a friendship between the three of us. I'm so grateful for your time. And yeah, I hope this is just the beginning. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you so
welcome.
much.
And we appreciate it. We appreciate the listeners. And yeah, I do think it's just a beginning. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you,
Great.
everybody. We appreciate you so much.
Thanks. Have a good night.